Hi, everyone. I'm going to break down some body camera footage from an incident in Windsor, Virginia, where two police officers arrest an Army officer who's in BDUs heading home from work during a traffic stop, and there's use of force. And this video has become very popular online. It's controversial. So I just wanted to break it down and try to add my perspective to the conversation to give you an idea of who I am. I was a police officer for about 9 years in a major metropolitan area here in the United States, worked in a variety of assignments from patrol to investigative roles and training recruits at the police academy as a recruit training officer. So teaching basic patrol procedures and how to conduct an interview, that sort of thing, to police who are entering the profession. When I left policing, I transitioned into like an academic role where now I'm a PhD student and I study policing, and my emphasis is on police-related deaths, so incidents between citizens and the police where a citizen dies. And for that research, I read, thousands of accounts of deadly force encounters between citizens and police and watch videos whenever I can find them for an incident. So I've been exposed to a lot of these types of incidents and have learned some things. I just wanted to share that information with you guys and give you an idea of what someone like me who focuses on this is looking for when they evaluate a video like this, and what people who are making a determination of whether or not something was legal, something was in policy, what types of things they're looking for. So the goal is just to give you that information. What it's not is, it's not an attempt to make any sort of definitive judgment on whether something was legal or something was within policy, because I don't know that. I don't have all of the policies for this department. I'm not familiar with the laws in Virginia. I don't have all of the evidence that would be collected in a thorough investigation, such as interviews with all the officers, witnesses, the person who was arrested. So I don't have access to the totality of the circumstances. What I'm going to do now is just based solely off of this video. So let's go ahead and get started. So when I say high-risk vehicle stop, that's sort of police lingo. It's a set of tactics that officers use, and it varies depending on where they are in the country, what department they're with. But basically, you've made a determination that this is a really dangerous situation. This person could be armed. Someone could get hurt. So we're going to be extra careful. We're going to stay behind our vehicles. We're going to shine lights. We're going to get our weapons out. We're going to give commands over a loudspeaker, have them get out of the vehicle, lay down on the ground. There's different tactics, but you've made a determination that this is a dangerous enough encounter that's something that's necessary. So this is an escalation. This is a use of force. You're going to be pointing guns at people. If you did that and you weren't a police officer, it would be aggravated assault. So you need to be able to justify, why you thought this was something that was necessary. And when people are evaluating whether or not something was reasonable, there's sort of like a balancing that's done between the state's interests and the interests of the individual, their rights. So the first thing is that we try to identify, what were all the facts and relevant information that was available to the officer at that time, and how would a reasonable officer, sort of like the template of just a reasonable police officer, have evaluated that, and what would they have thought was a reasonable course of action. And what you need to do is you need to assess the threat that was present at the time. And that threat could be the threat of harm to civilians or officers, or it could be just a threat to some objective or some goal that the state has to enforce traffic law or a noise ordinance or whatnot. So what are the interests of the state that are at risk? And then, so that's the first thing. And then you weigh that against the foreseeable impact of the action that the police officer takes. So, if you pull your gun out and you're pointing it at someone, you need to think about, well, what are the implications of this on that individual? So this individual's rights. And then you need to say, well, how would a reasonable officer at the scene with the information, would they have thought this was something that was reasonable and necessary? So in terms of threats at this point, the only thing that we have is someone who's slow to yield, So they didn't pull over right away. They drove to the gas station. And then the only sort of threat to the state's interests is this so far. There could be more, but in terms of what the officer is aware of, is that they were unable to see a license plate, which is a traffic violation. Now, it could be more, but that's all the information they have sort of right at that moment. And these officers decided for whatever reason, that this was warranted a high-risk vehicle stop. I'm not sure that it did. I don't know. There may be more information, but I would have major questions about whether or not is this proportional to the threat that is being presented right now.
How many occupants?
All units 1013, 804, 803, felony stop, 18 Windsor.
So I would say this office, the officer's perspective we're looking from now at this point, I think of him as the cover officer. So you can hear this other officer giving commands to the driver, and this officer's job should be to provide support for this other officer if you're doing a high risk vehicle stop. So he should be watching the vehicle, keeping an eye out for what's happening, seeing if there's any more information available. So one thing I would do if I were conducting the stop, if I didn't see the license plate in the regular area, because I've had this happen quite a bit, where there's a temp tag and it's behind some tint, it's difficult to see. So I would get my spotlight, maybe shine it on the back window and see if there's a temp tag. Maybe now I can see the tag. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the occupants of the vehicle for my partner, as my partner gives clear commands, because we don't want multiple people yelling at someone, telling them what to do. It can be confusing.
Come around your side.
There are other perspectives, and the occupant is sort of asking why.
How many occupants are in your vehicle? Open the door slowly and step out. Open the door. Get out the car. Open the door slowly and get out.
Get out of the car now!
Open the door, get out the car!
So if you're providing
Hold,
cover, all right.
Hold.
So at this point, I would identify this as another escalation. So the first thing I notice is that our cover officer, so the person who's responsible for providing cover while the other person is in charge of communicating, intercedes and starts yelling for the guy to get out of the vehicle. I don't think that's productive. And the next thing I notice is that they have taken a step forward. So they've left their vehicles and they're advancing up towards the vehicle. And this is a change in tactics. And what I would be asking is, what has changed that you think that this is the best option available to you? And then I would also ask, that you always be reconsidering whether or not this is something worth doing based on the threat to the state's interests that are at stake. So nothing has changed. Things could have changed. So if they had run this plate, once it stopped, it's difficult to see in this particular freeze frame, but there are images of the vehicle where you can see that there is a temporary tag affixed, and this is what news reports are saying, to the upper right-hand corner. And now that the vehicle stopped, you could perhaps read that tag, see who it comes back to. Now, if that tag had come back to an occupied, stolen, taken, and a carjacking, now the state's interests are high, but all we have at this time is that there was a plate that was not visible. The person was slow to yield. They have yielded, and now they're slow to get out of the vehicle. So the officers make the decision that they're going to push things forward. They're going to start advancing on the vehicle. I'm not sure what the thinking is, but that's the decision that's made.
Keep your hands outside the window. Keep your hands outside the window. Get out of the car now.
Get out of the car!
So that's one thing you have, and this is the problem, is you have two officers. So you have this officer here started giving commands. Now you have them both giving commands. You're having them giving contradictory commands. So keep your hands out the window, but also get out of the vehicle when, typically you would go in to open up the door, you'd need to undo your seatbelt. The big thing is like slowing things down, taking a deep breath, establishing communications with, your loudspeaker, however you're going to do it, and giving clear, calm, concise commands that are not likely to be misinterpreted. That's important, and they're not doing a good job of communicating here.
Now! Get out of the car now!
And then that silly loop where they're saying the same thing over and over
Get
again.
out of the car now! Yo, what? Guess what? I'm a veteran too. I learned to obey. Get out of the car!
So another thing is, and again, this is just, watching these things I'm seeing from my comfortable computer desk but as an officer, you should be looking for opportunities to de-escalate. So the best way to do that is by developing rapport with a person, slowing things down, starting to have a conversation and transition from communicating with your firearm, pointing your gun at someone and yelling at them, yelling commands at them to find. If that's not working, it might be more effective to establish some rapport. So the driver has said that he feels basically saying like he feels disrespected. He's in uniform, he's serving in the military, and he doesn't like the way he's being treated. And the officer who's wearing the body camera, it's Officer Gutierrez, says, "Yeah, I'm a veteran too, but I learned to obey." And what I would have hoped was that he might use something like that as an opportunity to establish rapport, to say, "Oh, you're in the military. What branch are you in?" "Oh, I'm in the Army." "Okay, yeah, I was in the Army too," or "I was in the Marine Corps." "Look, we're a little nervous. You were slow to stop. We didn't see a tag. We've had stolen vehicles in the area," that type of whatever you say. "And we just want this to be a safe interaction. Can you do me a favor and do X, Y, or Z?" Start a conversation and earn some trust of the driver here, because it hasn't been working just pointing guns and yelling.
Get out of the car now! What's going on is you're fixing to ride the lightning, son.
So he asks what's going on, and he says, "What's going on is you're fixing to ride the lightning, son," which I guess Officer Gutierrez thought was like a cool thing to say. I don't see how it's productive. What's going on? A good answer would be, "Hey man, I know, you're slow to get out of the vehicle. Let me just explain to you what's going on. We saw your car. We couldn't see a license plate. You were slow to stop. It made us a little nervous. Here's what we want you to do," and try to convince him to do it rather than, the smart aleck kind of remark. It's just not productive, and it's not professional. And so it's not good.
Get out of the car now! Get out of the car now! Get out of the car!
Sir, just get out the car. Work with us and we'll talk to you. Get out the car.
You received an order. Obey it.
I'm honestly afraid to get out. Can I?
Yeah, you should be. Get out. Get out.
Get out the car.
So I think this is sort of an important moment. So as any police-citizen interaction unfolds, it's incumbent upon the police officer to be constantly absorbing whatever information is made available and then reassessing whether or not the actions they're engaged in are reasonable, necessary, and proportional to the threat that's faced by the state. So when he says, "I'm scared," these officers, Officer Gutierrez and Officer Crocker, they may think, well, it's ridiculous. There's no reason to be scared. Just comply, do what you're told. But it's very reasonable, I think, given the current climate and the history in the United States, for a person who visually I would say, oh, this person may identify as a black man. And he's in the rural South in Virginia at night being pulled over by the police. And he may be a little scared. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me. So rather than saying, well, that's stupid, there's no reason to be scared, comply, it may be beneficial to say, well, what can I do to reduce your level of fear and make you feel more comfortable? Like saying, hey, look, I'm a veteran I appreciate your service. I think we're misunderstanding each other. I understand, you're a little nervous, a little scared. We're yelling at you with guns out. That's reasonable. do me a favor, keep your hands at the window. Here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to do it. Here's why we stopped you, and give them sort of a little bit of an understanding of how Officer Gutierrez and Officer Crocker are feeling. And maybe they're scared. Tell them that, hey, we're a little scared too. And when people are scared, it can be dangerous. So, let's talk this through. Here's what we want you to do.
Get out the car.
Get out now.
I have not committed any crime.
You're being stopped for a traffic violation. You're not cooperating at this point right now. You're under arrest you're being detained, okay? You're being detained for obstruction of justice.
Traffic violation. I do not have to get out the vehicle. You haven't even told
Really?
me why I'm being stopped.
Really?
Get
Get out of the car now. Get out of the car.
your hands off me.
Get out of the car.
Get your hands off me.
So Lieutenant Nazario, he is, again, asking why he was being stopped, arguing about whether or not he needs to get out of the vehicle. And again, rather than trying to establish rapport, it kind of feels like Officer Gutierrez is just sort of upset because his authority is being challenged, and his overriding interest is that you're going to do what I tell you to do, not necessarily what the state's interests are in enforcing the laws that you have a visible license plate. And I think one thing we can also glean from this encounter at this point is that the officer's put his gun away. He's grabbing his pepper spray now. He's out standing in front of this guy's window. I don't think that there's this overriding concern that there's some major crime afoot, some dangerous felony afoot.
Not a problem. Back up,
I
Daniel.
didn't do anything. Don't do that.
Sir.
Get out of the car now.
Hey, sir.
Get out of the car now.
Sir, look.
I'm trying to talk
Get out.
to you. Okay. I'm trying to.
And I like this here. Officer Crocker sees his partner pull out the pepper spray and maybe sees, hey, things are escalating and spinning out of control here. I'm going to interject myself. So he sort of steps and positions himself between Officer Gutierrez and Lieutenant Nazario and tries to open the door. So I like this as an opportunity to de-escalate.
Get out.
Just relax. Can you please relax?
Get out.
Please relax.
Get out of the car right now. Now.
This is not how you treat a vet. I'm actively serving this country, and this is how you're going to treat me.
Back up, Daniel.
I didn't do anything.
Back up.
Whoa, hold on.
Officer Gutierrez is telling him to get out of the way. And we have the pepper spray deployment. And again, you need to be asking yourself, are the interests of the state,
Get out of the car.
the things that are at risk
Get out of the car
for
now.
the state, severe enough that this is
Get
worth
out of the
doing?
car now.
Sir,
Is this going to fly in court? That's another thing an officer needs to be asking
Get out of the car now.
is when video of this incident is made available to the prosecutor and I charge this guy with failure to yield or failure to comply or interfering with the judicial, whatever the charge is in
Take your
Virginia,
seatbelt off and get out of the car. Get out of the car
no one's going to prosecute
now.
this.
Listen, take off your seatbelt and get out of the car.
Look, I'm just going to please.
You're gonna do what you're told. Get out of the car.
Look,
Take your seatbelt off and get out of the. Take your seatbelt off.
look, my hands are out.
Take your seatbelt off and get out of the car.
My hands are out.
Don't reach in there, Daniel. Don't reach in there.
My hands are out. Please. Please, look. This is really messed up. My dog is in the back. My dog is choking right
Get
now.
out of the car. Take your seatbelt off. What are you, a specialist, corporal? What are you?
I'm a lieutenant.
Lieutenant, get out of the car. Take your
I'm
seatbelt
gonna-
off and get out of the car. You made this way more difficult than it had to be. If you just complied. Get out of the car.
I'm reaching for my seatbelt.
Fine. Take your seatbelt off and get out of the car. Straight onto the ground. Straight onto the ground.
Ma'am. Is your commanding officer available?
Down. Let's go.
Is your commanding
Let's
officer
go.
available?
Get on the ground. Get on the
Can you
ground.
please talk to
Get
me
on the
about what's
ground
going
now.
on?
Get on the ground. You're getting sprayed again. Get on the ground.
Can you please talk to me about what's
Get on
going
the ground. Get on the ground now.
Can you please talk to me about what's going on?
And again, this is another use of force. You're going to grab the guy and prone him out on the ground. If you're going to handcuff him, you could turn him around and handcuff him. What's the necessity for laying him down on the ground? He's not assaulting anyone. He didn't flee at a high rate of speed. Based on the way the officers are behaving, it doesn't look based on observing their behavior, it doesn't appear as though they're scared he has a weapon or anything like that. So is it worth it?
Yes, sir.
For what's at stake for the traffic violation?
About what's going on. Why am I being treated like this?
Because you're not cooperating. Get on the ground.
Why am I being treated like this? This is really messed up. This is really messed up. Sir, well, just this is fucked up.
You can hear Lieutenant Nazario is legitimately upset. So I think just the major message here, and again, I'm not trying to pass judgment on anything. The major takeaway should be is that officers need to be evaluated on whether or not something they were doing was reasonable at that time, given the totality of the circumstances. Was the interest that the state held at risk worth defending with the amount of force that was used? And we didn't have anything with this other than a license plate that wasn't visible, and it turns out there was one in the upper right hand corner, so that's not really a big deal. We have someone who was slow to yield, but they provide an explanation. They say, I'm scared. It's a black man in the rural South in Virginia at night being pulled over by the police. Is it reasonable that they're a little scared and slow to comply with officers who were yelling and screaming at them and pointing guns at them? I think I can understand. I may not feel that same way because I haven't had those experiences. I don't view the world the same way I would as if I had lived in it presenting as a black man. But I should, as a police officer, try to put myself in the other person's shoes and say, how might they be interpreting this encounter, and how might they feel during this encounter, and what can I do to manipulate the way they feel to gain compliance? And I would argue that the best police officers that I ever worked with, the best detectives I ever worked with, the people I looked up to, were people who were really good at talking to people. They could walk into a room or start a traffic stop with somebody who really disliked them and didn't trust them, build a little bit of rapport, conduct their investigation, and do their job effectively without having to pepper spray people or yell tough guy comments that you're going to ride the lightning. And it just makes you look like an idiot. It makes you look incompetent. It shows that you haven't taken the time to really educate yourself and understand the people that you serve. So that's sort of basically what I take away from this video. Sorry it's a little long. There's just a ton going on here. And I think we can learn a lot. Thank you to Coffee or Die, and thanks for your time.